Continuing on Escape from Maine, I met many people that made a big difference in my life when I was at Maine. One of them being Joni, who was an older lady that was a female minister. She had gotten her ministry license online, so she was a pastor, a female minister that could minister to you. And I'd go to her place to visit her and her wolf-like dog. And we would sit and watch Stephen King movies like Bag of Bones and things and talk about Stephen King. She smoked a tobacco pipe. Then she came over one time to my place in Dover where I wrote the book, and we watched a vampire movie together, Let the Right One In, something like that. Joni was very funny. Joni also worked with me on a play that was written by June Woodson. June was a playwright in Dexter, an older lady, older than most of them, and she was also a director and a writer herself. She wrote a book called Rosemary for Remembrance, and Joni was there during her play, and I remember all our noses were kind of leaking because it was cold outside, and that's when Joni slapped her knee and said, "My name's Joni," and she slapped her knee so I'd remember her name. And I remember Joni's name ever since because of that one little action that I could see visually. Some are visual learners. She was great. And I had my video camera, and I did a lot of video camera of back roads of Maine. I have all that footage locked up. Because I used that footage when I wrote, the book. I was taking footage, just filming things. There was also several churches that helped me too. There's a non-evangelical church that's in Abbott. There's a Pentecostal church that's in Newport, Maine, known as Gateway. And then there was a First Baptist church near Bangor, and also several women too that helped, that would meet me through Plenty of Fish in Bangor and different places, just to walk and talk with me as I wrote it. Maybe to give me ideas, subliminal kind of thing. Went to many bookstores, health food stores, met Bert Chavetz, went in front of Stephen King's house a few times as kind of a mecca of writers. Went to several movies in Bangor, different movie houses. The movies I did get to see I got to see Batman 3, which is Dark Knight Rises. I got to see Johnny Depp in the vampire movie that he played, Dark Shadows. Abraham Lincoln, when Daniel Day-Lewis, when he played Abraham Lincoln, I got to see that at the Bangor Mall. And same with Dark Knight Rises, saw that at Bangor Mall. The Johnny Depp movie I saw at a different movie theater that was kind of an offshoot movie theater. That was Dark Shadows. I really enjoyed that. These were times I get to take off from the mill and drive out and enjoy movies and stuff. I think that's going to be part of it. And then the snow, lots of blizzards, all kinds of fun stuff. Walking on the ice in Wasakiag. It's a lake in Dexter. I got to walk on that. People would drive their trucks on the ice and ice fishing. I got to meet people and be a part of the community theater and the Center Theater. I met a lot of different people, a lot of important people. Some people were had family that were mail carriers and fishermen. There's a history of the Native American tribe, the Micmac Indian. Got to go to Old Town, play guitar. Got to go to Peaks Kenny and swim. Also, I went to Greenville to see all the craft work and the candles and the people and the music. I got to see a great musicians play at the Range Hall. That was in Dexter. And there was another one that was in Sangerfield. Got to hang out with a single mom and her 2 kids that want to be rock stars in Sangerfield. Right, sing all the time and play guitar. Got to go to Monson, hang out at an ex-sheriff's house and take care of his dog with my mom. He let us go into his house to take care of the dog. This is all before I had kids. This is my wilderness stage. I got to jog everywhere, jog around, mountain climbing. I went mountain climbing. I climbed a mountain in Monsoon at these Audubon. Basically it's a society. It's a sanctuary. I think they call it the Audubon Sanctuary, but it's in Monson, and they have a bird there that's extinct. It's like I want to say it's like an eagle or something, or a falcon. I think it's a rare falcon. And I got to climb the top of that and take photos. I have footage of that. I posted on Facebook too. I got to go to Dexter and study Revelations with a group of church people that study Revelations. Got to go mountain climbing, hang out with people that shot moose in the mill. They tell about their moose adventures. It's a great story. I'll never forget it. And I survived it. And I escaped it. And the most important part about escaping Maine is when I got back to Texas, I got to become a father of 3 children. 1, 2, and 3. Beautiful, beautiful children. I am now a father. So I did more than just work and write a book, but I learned stuff about myself and about the cold weather, about a beautiful land known as Maine. And I remembered my old land, Texas. Eventually got in the road and headed home. Or as they say, on the road. Followed the Moosehead Trail all the way to the main highway and headed south. I'm waiting at the leasing center. Just a note, because I know Escape from Maine will make it. I do plan to give back to my friends, all those that helped me when I was younger in some way. I plan to help them. She got her taco cabana. She's going through the gates. I told her that she should see. Well, the reason why I told her that is because on her text message, she has that thing. Because her text message went off, and it sounds like the Pink Panther. It goes, you know. I said, "Have you seen the Pink Panther?" And she was like, "Oh, okay, I think I've heard of it." I said, "Peter Sellers. But what you need to see is Being There with Chauncey, the gardener. It's very funny. You would love it. It's the best movie ever made." And she just goes, "Okay, I'll have to check it out. Being There, you got to see it." In the summer, the garden will be fine. And then there will be fall. Then winter. And spring. And the roots will hold. And summer, the garden will be fine. Note to Escape from Maine is when I was working the choppers, there was this little small guy. I don't know how tall he was, but he wasn't the tallest guy in the mill. Short, kind of stocky, big enough to grab one of those big pieces of wood and put it on the scathe, you know, to be cut into a ribbon. He was a big, kind of stocky guy, but not real tall. He walked over to me when I had the headphones on to protect my ears from the loud noise of the choppers. And he walks over, he says, you know, in a loud voice, "What do you got to buy or sell or trade?" And I just looked at him and I said, books. Because that's something. And then he walked off and grabbed a big old piece of wood, put it on the skate. Got to be in the film. Probably in the book. Hopefully I put that in the book. It's got to be in the film for sure. Who could play him? I don't know. I don't care. It could be anybody. He was a special little guy that looked like he liked to drink beer, party, have a good time. We're going to look at shots of we're going to look at a film of the Trinity. Right, Trinity, what do you got to buy, sell, or trade? No response, huh? May have gotten that line wrong. The little guy little munchkin guy that ran up to me. Be great for Peter Dinklage, though. I love that guy. What a great actor. One of our greatest actors of all time. Peter Dinklage from what's it called? Crown of Thorns. I need to watch it. I'll binge it one day, probably in retirement. The dragons and all the stuff. Love it. I love it. It'd be great for Peter Dinklage, though. Not the whole movie, just this one little role. I got to bring him in on set. But he could handle it. I mean, Peter's a pretty buff dude, but it's one of these big old pieces of round trunk wood. You know, they pick up they did birchwood. It was birchwood, red birchwood, I believe, or birchwood. He had just put it on the skates, and the skates is spinning. The thing goes down, water shoots out of the wood, and all this ribbon starts coming off of the wood. And he's got his head. He takes one of his headphones off. He said, "What would you like to buy, sell, or trade?" That's what he said. What would you like to buy, sell, or trade? And I said books. Because that's all I really had when I drove up there with all these books. I had a little library. And I still have those books today. There's just books I collected from college. But I took them up there with me with the cats. And a lamp. And some clothing. That were in my Rio. It was pretty full. It was like all the way up here. It was a pretty redneck thing to do. But instead of going into Beverly Hills, I was pulling to Dexter with a full thing of car. You know, full load. Stephen King rolling his eyes going, oh no. He's from Texas. If he's not a writer, then no one is. I always thought about Stephen King the entire time because Stephen King made a big impact on me with The Body and with, Stand By Me. It changed our generation as kids. Even when we were going into high school, we talked about that movie. Is that how we were supposed to be, or is that what we missed out on? You know, we didn't have that kind of generation. We certainly tried. I tried to write about it in Catnappers, which is not the same as Stephen King stuff. But we can't be that generation. We have to be our generation, you know. That's why I called for these guys like Dave Grohl and Matthew Perry. You know, these big generation guys. Even Larry David, even though he's kind of the old generation, because you know that's what Burt Shawvutz represents in the movie, the old generation. You know, the hippie generation that struck oil, just like Larry David. Perfect for him, or Woody Allen. I mean, I'm not dissing on Woody Allen because you know you always got to have a backup just in case Larry David's like, I'm a little busy. Get a hold of Woody Allen. All right, Woody, let's cart you over this way. Just stand there and look innocent. Say these lines or whatever you can remember. But that's what I mean, you know. I thought of the older generation when I wrote it, and it's for our generation. I had to do it. I had to go to Maine to write a book and then escape. And then I had to think about Jonah and the well the entire time. God forbid if he wanted me there, but he definitely wanted me there, you know. It's weird. I go all the way back to my mind in creative writings in Bob Reed's class. You know, thinking of Thomas Wolfe. These books. These massive books. Far harder than any silly movie. Far harder than a simple poem. Far harder than a screenplay. But the screenplays are pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult to adapt. The screenplay. And I got to go back. I knew I would not be able to escape from Maine. Here I am, close to, not too far from the Mexican border, and Maine calls. All these riders get sucked into its unexplained, mystical wilderness, where a small goblin-like character runs up to you and goes, "What would you like to buy? Trade or sell?" Everyone there at the mill planning to find another job. On the phone during break time. What, is that position open yet? Is there another position there? Is it, so, you know, everybody, they can barely hear, but that work has to be done. And there will be riders that will go into that work and come out with a long, long tail. Another time I remember being at, Stephen King was the talk of the town even when we were there. I was trying to remember a story that, because I started off with a graveyard shift. I started off working late. Stephen King worked the textile one way back before I even arrived. It doesn't really matter. It was only a blink of an eye. I was right there behind him doing the wood. And we were trying to think. I was like, what is that story? It's called The Graveyard Shift. Yeah, where the bat is and all that. I guess, like, yeah, that's kind of a cool story. So what's that from? I couldn't even tell, and I'm supposed to be the writer. The guy who's like my foreman, he goes, "Oh, it's Skeleton Crew." Like, dude, the Mainers are so literal, man. They're smarter than the New Yorkers. They know it like, oh, Skeleton Crew. You know, they know all of it, man. It's amazing. The brains those mill workers had. They closed this off right here. Darn it. Then I heard the bulldog, "Use your reserves, Cole. Use your reserve." You know, the reserve pilot. If you mess up, you got another reserve pilot, because the choppers have to keep going. You can't, another thing too, I hate to say this, I pooped my pants one time. You can't leave the line or it'll mess up everything. So you have to hold the line. And I did, I slightly pooped my pants until finally I was, relieved. Well, I was already relieved, but I was relieved by another worker to go run in the bathroom and take my underwear off and clean them out in the sink. You just can't mess it up, you know. I had to poop very bad one night. I was working the graveyard shift and I was working the choppers. I remember Nick would come up in the morning to, relieve me of my position to take over that for the day shift, because Nick worked the day shift. He was one of my neighbors, had a baby and a wife and everything. So I'd wait for him, and then he would relieve my position. But that one night, no one was around, and everyone was busy. And plop, plop, fizz, fizz, right into my britches. And I just went, oh dear. That should probably be in the movie too. And it was smelly. I had to go in the bathroom and wash my shorts out. I pooped myself for that position. It wasn't a big, long poop. It wasn't a long turd. But there has to be scatological humor in all great fiction. It's probably in the book. And then one of the mill workers that I replaced for the chopper, he was drinking and was at home working on a table saw, and cut the very tip of his thumb off, and they had to fly him to Boston. That's what they did. If something happened, they'd fly you to Boston. If you got the flight to Boston, oh dear. He made it out all okay, but I had to take over his position for a while. That's when the bulldog came up to me and kind of kneeled down, took his hat off, and said, "Cole, can you work the choppers?" He didn't want to have to mess with my hearing a little bit, I said, I guess I will, And I did. I mean, I couldn't say no. You either worked or you died. You worked in my mind. I don't know about other people's mind. There's rock stars there that come out of there. There's lazy bums. There's people out there that have started YouTube shows. There's all kinds of stuff in Maine. It's just like anywhere else. But in my mind, I either worked or I died. I just didn't want to be sitting at home all day in 10-degree weather. I'd rather be at the warm mill. That thing was warmed by, it had its own steam engine kind of thing, It had it ran on wood. They burned wood all day to keep warm. They had this huge thing, this generator thing they throw this wood in. Oh, there's another thing too that we have to keep in the movie. What did they call it? They had a name for it. and I think they may have called it something like the Beast, but it was is in the bowels of the mill, in a very dark place. This is where the Lynchian stuff gets in, the David Lynch stuff, and you had to go there to drop the trash into this like furnace looking thing, but it was very dark and you couldn't see, and you could hear all this grinding noises and all this stuff, and you're walking back there and you're waiting for a big rat to jump out and get you, you know. And then there's like this thing, you open it up, it's all iron, and you throw this thing in there. It wasn't really a furnace, but it was like where they stored the trash. I think it was a furnace. They called it the Beast or something like that. It's like the bowels of hell is underneath all the, well, kind of like underneath some of the machinery. They kept the place pretty clean, though. There was one place called Repack that's in the story. It smelled kind of like a septic tank. You know, all these women would be in there packing the dowels, what they call it, these wood dowels. They'd drop them in these, like, Chinese-style to-go containers, about the size of a Chinese-style go container. A little bit bigger than that. And they would repack all day, and then, you know, time for repack, and you're like, oh God, these is where the conversations get in about high school and girls and all, you know, maybe a movie, you know, oh, I remember that movie, and blah, 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 blah. Hey, that damn maintenance guy won't come by and do those, blah, 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 and you hear about everybody's problem with apartments and things that they're living in. There's another thing that happened, too, because they knew I was lonely. They offered up a woman to me. This lady, I was trying to get baptized and start over. One of the guys told me, he's like, well, maybe you should meet one in church. You know, he said that to some guy from the church. She just arrived at my table and was like, oh, okay, I heard you're looking for a date. You know, I was like, well, I'm working right now. You know, there's some lady, some older lady that was single. And then the guy kind of walked up to me and said, well, you might want to find one in church. Yeah, it's a good idea. I'll do that. People would have like epileptic seizures during the day crew. There was an above area that I never went to. It's all electronics and all this stuff. Sometimes they'd have seizures and they'd have to take them. There's a lot of machinery, a lot of energy in that entire mill. It was a place to escape. Sorry, Peter Dinklage. Game of Thrones. I said Crown of Thorns. It's Game of Thrones. So I messed that one up big time. I focus on two things at once, and Game of Thrones is what Peter Dinklage was in. Sorry about that. You knew I was going to go back and correct it. So. The old taco casa, by far the best place to get a quick taco in the universe. My opinion. The Super Burrito, $4.39. They want 2 chiladas, no black onions. They want 2 chiladas, no black olives, Dr. Pepper. They want 2 chiladas, no black olives, no Dr. Pepper. You'll have to forgive me, Peter Dinklage, about the Game of Thrones. I said Crown of Thorns. Probably what they call a Freudian slip, or I guess in this case, I don't know what kind of slip it was. But Game of Thrones is raw, man. Raw. I mean, it's raw. From what I've seen, I'm like, my gosh, this is rated what? This is the most violent thing since Reservoir Dogs, if not worse. Yeah, I saw some guy get his head, you know, you saw that scene. The gold melting onto the guy's head until he solidifies into death. You know, they turn the guy into gold. My goodness. You know, and the dragons breathing on people. And the women, golly. Beautiful, beautiful women. Especially in Game of Thrones. I mean, there are some hotties. Then this little short guy slobber all over him. Wonderful. Wonderful. Full of wonder. Game of Thrones, Peter Dinklage. Walk forward. Your sword, please. Oh, it's a dagger. Okay. Your dagger, please. All right. Go forth, my friend. Another story about Escape from Maine. Let me drop this off first. Being pretty honest, I went through students of telepathy.